So welcome to day 3. And we've been building to an exciting time today where we're going to be talking about how to sell your book. So if you recap, when we got together with Dan Ritchie on day 1, we talked first about the 10 different publishing strategies for business, really the 4 that I think are the best to actually grow a business. And we met Dr. Dan Ritchie, and we talked about 2 of the strategies he used, which was the signature book strategy and then the perfect niche book strategy. We talked about licensing your books, right? So if you have certified coaches or clients, you can license your content to them and make them a published author faster than if they wanted to write it on their own. So the replace for all of this is in the Facebook group, of course. And then yesterday we were with Eric Thane. He is a cinematographer, entrepreneur, Reels expert, and now he's building a movement on helping entrepreneurs become creators. And the thing that I think everybody seemed to like the most that resonated with him was that being an entrepreneur is its own personal development journey. And if you really, if you really want to get out there, like you got to work harder on yourself than anything else. And I'm sure Ed will talk about that. So today now with Ed Rush, you're going to explore now, like if you have books and you don't want to just give them all away like Ed did, or like Dan Ritchie did, right? And you actually want to sell the books and make money and run a very profitable business on the back end, then you're going to love what Ed is showing you today and how he's doing it. So I'm excited to share that. But first, in the Facebook group, I put today's homework. And so today's homework is just a brainstorming sheet that we use with our authors when we're answering the 9 key questions to identify what book they need to write. So remember, 4 out of 5 people that I'm talking to planning to write the wrong book. So the decisions that we've been making along here are moving you towards the clarity that you need on what book you need to write. And so today's homework is to just start now brainstorming influencers and allies that you can start building relationships with now, so that when the book comes out, those people know who you are, they're on your radar, and they can help you promote it. So they can also then bring you clients in that process. So when we look at influencers and allies, we're really looking at like, who might you want to write the foreword for your book? Do you want endorsements on your back cover, right? Do you want a particular relationship or a client? So for example, if I were in the consulting space and I wanted Caterpillar as a client, then I might use a story about something Caterpillar has done well inside of my book, so that even if I don't have a relationship now with Caterpillar, if I had one, I might be able to send a book and say, hey, I told a story about what you guys were doing in chapter 4. Go check it out, right? And so there are all kinds of ways to use your influencers and allies, but only if you're thinking about them before you start writing. And so that's the goal of your homework today. So it's in the worksheet. But now I want to bring up my dear friend, mentor. I don't know. I can never decide which one to put first, Ed. So I'll go with the backstory of how I met you. So we go all the way back to 2010. I started getting interested in this idea of publishing books for business owners and clients. And so we produced our first 3 books in 2012. And I had produced probably about 30 to 40 books, but this growing trend, like this was before people were really doing a lot of books. But there was this new trend about becoming an Amazon bestseller. And Ed and his business partner or friend at the time, Mike Koenigs, were both hosting was it 3-day workshop, Ed?
Yep, 3 days.
Yep.
Called
Yeah. So
Author Expert Marketing Machines.
yeah.
I think
And you would
Navi was
literally,
there actually, if I
who
remember
was?
correctly.
Oh yeah.
Navi.
Navi's in the room. That's right.
Yeah.
Navi was there. That's where we met. So I flew out to San Diego and I got certified as a best-selling author coach, and which was really cool because in order to be out there, I had to, or to get certified, I had to write a book and take it to bestseller status. And if I did, Ed and Mike had this guy, and I can't think of his name. He was running kind of the panels and stuff. He said, if you're certified as a best-selling coach by the time you get out here, I'll put you on stage. And I'm like, well, challenge accepted, game on. So I had exactly 5.5 weeks to write a book and take it to bestseller status and get a printed copy to show up in San Diego for. And you know me, I did it. And so that's where Ed was the featured speaker while we were there. And and I remember two things about that, Ed. The first thing was your integrity. I decided at that point, someday I want to work with you. Like I just was blown away by him. And then the other thing was it was a 3-day workshop, and the third day was Sunday. And you told the group, look, on Saturday, I'm here, I'm with you today, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to be here tomorrow because tomorrow's Sunday and it's family day, and I'm going home to be with my family. And I ironically, the book that I had chosen to write was a book called Closed Sundays.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, so I got a photo with you and me, and maybe I'll pull it up later, with me and the book Closed Sundays, and then you split. And it was in 2018 that I finally could afford to hire you, and you became my business coach. You rewrote my you rewrote my brain. You rewired my brain, right? And taught me the value of what I'm worth, and helped me achieve what you're seeing here today, all of you, as this business. And along the way, then Ed has just been a wonderful friend and coach. And then when he went to publish his 6th bestseller, which is God Talks, I got a chance that he called me, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So from there, Ed, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I mean, that actually just, I think that describes perfectly the vetting process. So, I mean, we knew each other for, I think it was 12 years, Nicole, before I actually hired you. And I'll just tell you, those of you listening, I've trained, I think at this point, the number is 1,015. So 1015 people to be coaches, consultants in the book space. By the time I had written this or gotten ready to written this last book, God Talks, I'd already written 5 books. My 5th book was at one point the #1 best-selling business book on Amazon. It was the number 22 book over all books on Amazon. It has over 1,400 reviews, and so I knew what writing a book was all about. And yet still I hired Nicole. And I will tell you that I was thinking this morning, I'm like, that's probably the best vetting process that I could describe. And I will tell you, she knows this too. I'm just started work on my 7th book, and Nicole and I are already talking about working together on that. So she knows that. What she does, there's very few people, frankly, that do things with like a 10 out of 10 excellence. There's a lot of people who can market themselves really well, and give you a good pitch. But when it comes to delivery, you want to work with someone who under promises and over delivers. And I was blown away. There were a lot of things that I didn't even know came with the work that I did with Nicole that was awesome. And that was unsolicited. That wasn't part of my presentation. But what I will tell you is a piece of advice. I'm actually going to jump up on my whiteboard here if you can see this other camera. Let's see if this switches over here. Hang on a second.
Yeah,
And
I'm going to pin. I'm going to
here we
remove
go.
myself. Here
That's
we go.
fine.
Uh-oh, he froze. Ed, you froze.
Mistake that most authors make is looking at their book like how J.K. Rowling produced Harry Potter. You know, as you know, she's just a billionaire based on book sales. You know, like Chicken Soup for the Soul, based on book sales. But I heard when I was, I would say back in 2008, I'd probably been in business for like 2 years. For those of you who don't know, I was a fighter pilot. I was in the Marine Corps for about 11 years, 2 years in the reserves. Got out of the Marines back in 2006, started growing, selling businesses. I wrote my first book in 2008. I had no idea what I was doing. I bought 3,000 copies. They showed up on a pallet in front of my house. I still have copies of that book sitting in my office. Okay. I made every mistake in the book, but I started growing a business, started helping business owners. And back in like 2008, 2009, I heard a guy named J. Conrad Levinson speak. And for those of you who know J. Conrad Levinson, he wrote a book called Guerrilla Marketing, fairly famous, influential book. And J. Conrad Levinson was on stage and he said, that's my $10 million book. My $10 million book was Guerrilla Marketing. And the moment he said that, I thought, man, he must have sold like 1 million copies, made $10 per copy, something like that. I didn't understand the math back then. And what he said was, he said, I got $35,000 in the royalties for my book. So that was Guerrilla Marketing. He said, I got $35,000 for the royalties of Guerrilla Marketing. And he said the other, what's the math? $9,965,000. This is what he said. I made on speaking deals and consulting deals and follow-up work and event attendees and people who follow me online and buy my products. And he named a whole series of other things that really created a business. And I kid you not, like, you want to talk about a light bulb moment? This was like, my drawings aren't wonderful, just so you know. This was like my light bulb moment where I was like, I get it. I finally understand what books are actually all about. Because up until that point, I was sure that I was going to write a book that would just sell millions and millions of copies, By the way, that's going to happen actually sometime soon. But I was always sure, like, gosh, if I sold, like, the current royalty I make on a book on Amazon right now is anywhere from, say, $4 to $6, $3.50 probably to $6. Call it $4. Well, if you sell a million books, you're going to make $4 million. That's amazing. Okay. But I can tell you, if I sell a million books on Amazon, I'll probably make another $50 million on the back end. I'm going to show you just structurally, essentially how that works. And I can confidently tell you that I have made more than $1 million, literally several $1 million on the back of my books. And I can confidently tell you that I have not made over, oh shoot, I probably haven't even made over $200,000 in terms of just the royalties of the actual book. If you want to know, full disclosure, I get paid every month by Amazon. Like, my books bring in sales. So Amazon will drop $3,000 or $5,000 basically a month into my bank account. And if you want to know fully transparently, I don't even look at it. Like, it's not even I don't even almost consider it a revenue stream, because my entire approach when it comes to books is not what the book can do in terms of the revenue that it produces, but what can the book do in terms of the business that it will build for you. Okay. And I'm going to show you what my business looks like. I'm not, just full disclosure, I'm not telling you to build a business like this. I'm just showing you a model on how to use a book to build something that's truly extraordinary. Okay. So if you look at a business like a gigantic funnel, I'm sure you've heard this term before, especially if you follow like Russell Brunson. I'm going to talk about it a little bit differently than a lot of other folks talk about it. But if you look at a business like a gigantic funnel, the way that a business typically works is, like, if you're familiar with, like when you look at a restaurant on Yelp, you're looking for a restaurant nearby, and Yelp's like, well, that's a $1 restaurant. And you're like, well, there's probably cockroaches running across the floor. And then there's the $2 restaurant. You're like, the burger's probably going to be okay. Then there's a $3 restaurant, and you're like, that place will be great. And then there's like a $4 restaurant, and you're like, it'll probably be okay, but they'll think they're great. Kind of the way that works. Well, if you look at a business, like, this is kind of the way that it works. Like, as you work down into the funnel, the dollar signs just get bigger. Okay. And this whole entire zone up here is the free zone. Okay. So this is when people engage with you and your business in such a way that they can interact with you and not have to invest anything other than their time. So if you go to Instagram and watch one of my Instagram reels, or if you come to this training, actually, you're watching me. I don't think you paid to be a part of this. We're interacting here for free, right? This is all the stuff that exists up at the top. All right, now, secret number one is I put my book in this category. Remember I said it's almost like an afterthought, whatever Amazon pays me on a monthly basis. I mean, it's nice. I'm not saying like I don't want to receive that. What I'm saying is it's so insignificant for the rest of the business that I simply look at my book like a way to generate two main things. Number one, I'm looking to generate leads, obviously people who are interested in my business. Okay. And the second thing, we're going to get to this in just a little bit, is what I'm also trying to create is a category of people that's called true believer. Okay. Now, for those of you who have a faith background, like, if I say true believer and you're been going to a Christian church for your whole life, if you say true believer, what you actually mean is a person who's been following that faith for their entire life. So just, I'm not talking about a religious institution. What I'm talking about is someone who's so bought into the message that not only do they live the message, but they also tell the people around them about this message totally for free. Okay. There is a category of customer that is more than a customer. It's an evangelist, if you want to use the religious, like more religious terminology. Okay. And to do this, you have to build a movement. Okay. You don't just write a book, you build a movement. I'm going to give you some tips on how to do that in a little bit. By the way, one of the tips, grab a pen and write this down, is if you can create something in your book that people do instead of learn, you can begin creating movement. So for example, how many of you, just by show of hands, well, I can't see all the videos, I guess. Either show of hands or give me a high five in chat. A high five in chat is literally the number 5 in chat. How many of you know a guy named Hal Elrod? You guys ever heard of Hal Elrod before? Raise your hand if you have. Okay. Hal Elrod and I have been friends for 13 years. I knew Hal back when he had 1 jacket and 2 ties. Okay. He knew me back before I had 1 jacket and 2 ties. And I will tell you, I knew Hal before he wrote this book called Miracle Morning. And he told me the idea. He said, I'm going to write this book called Miracle Morning, which is basically like, you get up early and you get all your stuff done before, 6 o'clock or whatever the message is. And I was like, how? That's like everybody does that. You know, like everyone says, get up. And he goes, no, but I'm going to call it Miracle Morning. And to his credit, by the way, brilliant marketer, great writer, and he built a movement of people. Just so you know, people have been getting up early for like the last 6,000 years. Okay. It is a success principle that you can literally read about in the Proverbs. Okay. It's like not new, but to Hal's credit, he created this idea of something that you do, not just a book that you read to hear something or to learn something, but you actually end up doing something. Okay. And I will tell you full disclosure, my last two books were purposely written with a methodology of something that you do, not just something that you learn. It's a really important point. The second thing, if you're trying to create true believers, is you create or write something that how do I say this? Like disrupts their hypnotic way of thinking or breaks a common way of doing things. Okay, so let me give you an example. My last book, not the one that I just wrote, the 2 books ago, is a book called 21 Day Miracle. And the introduction to 21 Day Miracle, I'll just read you the first like 3 paragraphs of this book. 21 Day Miracle, the opening is title is called How to Get Anything You Want. It says, do you want to know the biggest lie in personal growth? It's the tortoise and the hare. You've been told that slow and steady wins the race, and you've been told that persistence and consistency create champions. They don't. That's because in real life, the rabbit always wins. Okay. So the point of this book is taking a common convention, which is ridiculous, by the way. Hey, this turtle will always beat. It doesn't. It never wins. Like you put an actual rabbit next to an actual turtle, the rabbit will win literally every time. And yet, when I grew up as an entrepreneur, they were like, slow and steady wins a race. I'm like, that's not how it works, actually, at all. What works is strategic sprints. You sprint and then you rest, and then you sprint and then you rest. Well, essentially, what 21 Day Miracle was a book teaching people about how to do something, and the methodology was 21 Day Miracle. And the book that I most recently wrote, it's called God Talks, took that and extended and literally is creating a movement around people. The idea of people waking up in the morning and having an actual conversation with God about their day and then going about their day. And it's been unbelievable to see the life-changing power. Like if you're familiar with what most people do, like most people, and I'm talking like 98% of the people wake up in the morning, roll over and turn on their phone. And they'll often navigate either to their email or to some social media app and literally begin their day on the defensive for whatever awful trash is moving through those social media apps. And just, you know, I don't have any of the social media apps on my phone. I do not live that way. I do not like social media. I post there all the time, just so you know. I just don't consume that material because I don't want to be trained. I don't want my mind being trained by somebody like, do you understand? Even if the person's right about their political viewpoint or whatever, they're probably communicating it in an energetic state that's anger, that's in scarcity, that's in like discouragement. Like there's very few people when you read them that you're connecting to love, joy, peace, power, prosperity. And if they're not there, then maybe you shouldn't be reading them. Okay. So the whole point of God Talks is to create a group of people who are connected, heart-centered, abundance-minded entrepreneurs who, instead of connecting to a guru or instead of connecting to some social media app or instead of connecting to their email, start their day with a simple conversation with God, simple 10-minute conversation with God. Now that's the point. Now back to the business. My book is one of a handful of what I call lead generation sources. Remember I said there's basically 2 things your free thing should do or your book should do. Number 1, it should be a wonderful lead generator for you. And number 2, it should indoctrinate you. I'm just going to use that word in a non-cult way. Okay. It should indoctrinate people into a way of thinking that is your way of thinking and out of another way of thinking. Okay. And look, it doesn't take like a rocket scientist to know that our culture right now has a very broke way of thinking. Okay. You know that whole thing where people are like, well, the majority is always right. Did you know that is completely false? The majority is always wrong. Okay. Always. So most people are out of shape. Most people are broke. Most people have bad relationships. Don't live like everyone. There's an 80-20 rule for a reason. Work yourself up onto the top of the 80-20 rule and think differently. When you think differently, you'll attract the right people to you and you'll be able to build a movement that changes the world. So if you look, for example, at the free lead sources in my business, I've got my book. I've got all the social media platforms, which, like I said, even though I'm not there, I still post there. Sometimes I'll reply or like somebody's thing on my thing. I'm not there like complete disappearosaurus, but I've got social media. I've got my website. I've got Zoom meetings that I do. I've got my email list. I've got speaking events that I do. I have other people that promote me, my events, my God Talks events, business events. The list goes on. There's like 20 different things that lead people to me. Now, in my business, and I'm not saying that this should be your business, what typically happens is the most of the time, these folks will end up on my email list, and the first point of contact that somebody hits me is an event. So this isn't true. I wouldn't recommend this for every business. It just so happens that this works really well for my business. Let's see. I see at least 1, 2, 3 people. How many of you have been to one of my events before? Raise your hands. Take it up. There's a handful. Okay. Oh, hey, what's up, Kathy? I didn't even see you down there. Kathy O'Hanks in the house. What's going on? There you are. I got all the squares and I see you right down there. What's up, sis? Good to see you. Man, I love you. You are such an amazing person, Kathy. So, all right, that's a woman who's dialed it in, man, by the way. She's got it. She's got it figured out. Okay, so all of these free things for me lead to essentially like the first dollar sign on the Yelp, which are my events. My events are typically between $300 and $500. We'll have 200 or 300 people we have an event coming up this summer. It's called God Talks Wisdom for Business, where you literally download ideas from heaven about your business, straight strategies about your day, your schedule, your lead generation, literally the details of your business. So the event is 300 or 500 bucks. And I know this sounds crazy. And I already told you this up here, I don't consider as a revenue source, even though the book brings me money. I told you probably $3,000 to $5,000 a month in book royalties. Now this event, I'll have 300 people come to this event this summer. Most people will pay between 300 or 500 bucks. Some people will have a guest that they'll bring for free, something like that. But we'll bring in, call it another $60,000 in revenue from this event. You might be surprised to know that I don't even consider that revenue, okay? Because by the time I run the event, pay my team, get the place, get the video person there, this essentially is a break-even thing, okay? So far, follow me here. So far, I've actually lost money here, okay? I have a social media team. I have people that I pay to publish and help me with my book. I've got ads that are running, spend about $6,000 a month on ads, okay? All of those people are leading to a conversation with me on social media or on my email list. Then most of the time people come through this narrow funnel of coming to one of my live events. I just told you the revenue on the live event, probably about $60,000 in registration revenue, which I don't even consider revenue because at that point I'm simply paying all of my expenses. And you're like, oh, wait a second. This is like the worst business I've ever seen. Dude's got like no money coming in. We'll wait till we get down to the bottom of the Yelp part, okay? Because what happens here at this event is essentially 2 things. Number one, typically someone will become a CFL. All right. And I'm going to leave that there for a second because I want someone to put in chat. Does anyone know what's up, Brian Z? Brian's one of our certified coaches and everything, man. It's awesome. Does anyone know, type in the chat, CFL. Does anybody know what CFL stands for? Does anybody know what that phrase CFL stands for? I'm going to give it to, man, Caroline, you killed it right off the bat. So a CFL is a customer for life. Okay, that is someone who stays, pays, and refers. When you have something extraordinary, people want to know what's next, okay? Most business owners have created their business for the purpose of getting a sale, okay? Great business owners create their business. Hang on.
Maybe.
So
That's okay.
we're going to hit, somebody's got to go. I don't know where the noises came from, but all right, so what was I saying before I interrupted myself? So most businesses create a business to get a sale. Great businesses get a sale to get a customer, okay? And I will tell you, you come to my events, you'll see people, I'll go like this. How many people is this your second event? How many people, third event, fourth event, fifth event, sixth event, seventh event? You'll see people raise their hand on the 10th event thing, okay? Look, you have to be doing something right for someone to come back that many times. So the first step is to create a customer for life. And then the second thing is to create a true believer, okay? Now, a true believer in the sense of a great business is not only a person who's bought into the philosophy or whatever the teaching is. Obviously they believe the person who is teaching. But the third thing, and this is really important, is they also become a member of the community, okay? And I purposely, like Nicole will tell you, I'll tell this story about our conversation she and I had about 2 years ago. After the conversation I had with Nicole 2 years ago, I purposely created a business that is not centered around like the guru. I always tell people, I'm not trying to start a cult. What I'm trying to start is an abundance-minded community of people who are helping each other out. And the craziest thing has happened over the last 5 years. I've been teaching this process, this God Talks process, for about 7 years. I've been calling it God Talks for about 2.5 years. And the crazy thing that's happened, so if you come to the events, there's I can confidently just tell you literal actual miracles happen at this event. It is crazy that it happens at business events. And if anyone's been to the events, you've seen stuff that like will blow your mind. Okay. And I will just tell you, not only do people show up and get emotionally healed, not only do they get their businesses fixed, but quite often at the events, people literally physically get healed from things like back and neck problems, hand problems, cancer. Like there's pretty extraordinary things that happen at this event. Now, I didn't set off for that to happen. I certainly didn't like, try to create some sort of healing thing or whatever. But when it started happening, I was smart enough to like not stop it from happening. Okay. And what would often happen is in the beginning events when I was teaching, often sometimes I would just feel like there was somebody who was it was important for us to pray for them, or the group was going to get together and we were going to pray for them. But it was always me. Like it was always me that sort of initiated the conversation, or I would have them stand up and give them a microphone, and we would have them have this huge breakthrough in front of everyone, and it was always me. And it was turning into a little bit of sort of like what I would call the Ed Rush show, where kind of all of the extraordinary things were sort of happening when I was interfacing with the person. And what's happened over the last 3 years, to my joy and delight, is that most, if not all, of the extraordinary breakthroughs and the actual like literally miracles that have happened at these events are often happening when the community members are getting together with each other on a break, or over dinner. Someone will start praying for someone and they'll have some major breakthrough. And it's happened. It happens very seldom now that I'm the one doing it, and it happens all the time now that the community. I mean, we've got over 200 people in our God Talks online community. We have hundreds of people that come to this event. We've got 70 certified coaches. I've got 43 people in my one-on-one coaching membership. I'm going to get to all this in a second. And what happens when you build a group of true believers is the world is not dependent on you to show up and wave your magic wand and deliver. What happens is your community members begin to take your teaching and your philosophy, and they start to implement that in the lives of other people. And you get this exponential effect where the results of your message begin to grow. And I will tell you, not a day goes by, not a single day goes by that I don't get to see another story of someone's breakthrough. And I will just tell you, 99.9% of the time, I didn't have anything to do with that other than introducing that person to the material in the community. Literally, it was someone else, who said, "Hey, let's jump on the phone and let's pray about this." And next thing you know, this person has this extraordinary breakthrough. And I didn't I didn't have them schedule. I didn't encourage them they just did it on their own because they're true believers. And what happens when you end up with true believers is your message begins to spread exponentially. You get some more book sales, by the way, which is also really nice. And you have to actually exert less marketing effort, because you start to build this wave of people who are now coming to you instead of the other way around. Okay, that's the point of the event. Okay, is to create some community, to create customers for life, and to create true believers. Now, the rest of this list here, I'll do these ones in green because they're the money. All right, so the event, $300 to $500. You should come to one if you can. July 29th to the 31st. Then I've got products. I have a series of training products. I've got a product on communication. I've got one on time management called Easy and Light, the world's easiest time management system. I've got a program called Advanced God Talks. Those are anywhere from, say, $500 to $2,000. Okay. Then I've got a certification. These are people who get certified in the God Talks process and trained to go out as coaches. When people ask us for coaching on God Talks, we refer them to our coaches. That's $4,000. And then I've got my what I call my Top Gun coaching program, which is my one-on-one coaching program. Nicole was in this program for several years, and that's starts at $25,000. Okay, so the price tag on this one is $25,000 for the regular program. That's when you get. This is the first time you get to coach one-on-one with me, and my private client program goes all the way up to $47,000. Okay, now Remember all these times I told you where I wasn't making money? I want to put this in the context. There's 43 people currently in this program right now. Just for full disclosure, there were some folks. So the program 3 years ago was 18,000, and I do still have some people who came in the program back when it was that price. So I know you're going to multiply 43 by 25, which is a little over $1 million. It's not, there are some people still paying like 18,000 or whatever, the folks who were grandfathered in, but like it's still really lucrative. So like it's fascinating to me. Like, I mean, probably 70% of my income, and certainly my net income, comes in from this particular program, but maybe about 10% of my time and about 70% of my time shows up here, right? At the beginning of the funnel to get people interested into coming to that. Now, the reason that I did this entire thing, there's two reasons. And then Nicole, I'll sit down and like pitch it back to you because I know I just went for a little run there. First of all, go back to the comment from Jay Conrad Levinson. He called guerrilla marketing his $10 million book. And I already told you, I'll bet you, shoot, just this year, best guess, God Talks, the book, will generate anywhere between 1.5 and $2.5 million in my business. Of that, the book sales will probably be, call it $50,000. So like it's so small. I mean, $50,000 is not small. I'm not saying that, but compared to the other part of it, it's so small almost to be insignificant. Okay. Without this, even with the book sales that I just mentioned, which are significant, without any of this, I'd be a struggling author. You know what I'm saying? Like struggling to make ends meet. Why won't people read my book? Well, you know what? They are. They're reading your book. It's just that you're not giving them more opportunity to engage with the content. Now, I'm not telling you to build this exactly the way I built it. I do it this way because I just realized a long time ago that when people walk into my events, we just do these events that are just, they're so different and they're so extraordinary and there's such excellence that comes alongside of it. My team is unbelievable and the audio visuals and everything, that when people walk in, they just do like, remember that old story when the Queen of Sheba came to Solomon and she was like kind of blown away, like she had no words left. That happens when people come to these events. And so we realized this is just the marquee exposure event and connection event for people. And that's what we decided to do. Okay, now, the last thing I'll say, and then Nicole, I'll pitch it back to you, is in the discussion of this little training, Nicole, I think in the email, she said something like, hear the mistake, you'll find out the mistake Ed made. Okay, so I'm going to tell everyone the mistake, Nicole. And then I'll tell everyone the mistake and then I'll pitch it back to you. So here was the mistake. And I will tell you that this is this has been I'd say my biggest business mistake over the last almost 20 years of business, which is typically when I'm done communicating something, I am literally ready to move on to the next thing. I love learning new things, grappling with new concepts. And that's turned into a little bit of a business dysfunction where I will literally jump to the next thing without essentially reaping or finishing the last thing. And I was on the phone with Nicole. This is when we were writing God Talks together. And just, Nicole's been a client. She's been a student. She's a friend, but I paid her. Okay. So like I signed up with her and paid her. She told me the price. I didn't talk her down or anything. I wired her half of the money and I sent her the other half 3 months later or whatever our payment thing was. Okay. So I paid her because look, if you want to work with the best, you got to stop being cheap on your way to success. All right. And I was like, I'm going to pay her. And I was on the phone call with Nicole and the comment that she made truly is probably a $10 million comment. Okay. So just so you know how much I value this one thing. And she said to me, she goes, you do realize that God Talks is a 10-year brand. And I have to say, I was about ready to do what I do normally, which is I'm going to write something and move on to the next thing, and there's some gifting in there. I'm not like totally trashing myself. I'm just saying dysfunctionally, if you build something, you really want to create the platform for it to, create fruit in its season for a really, really long time. And she was really right about that. And because of that, we actually built this beautiful infrastructure around this business to create 10-year longevity. We've got people, we have certified coaches, but we have coaches that train the certified coaches that aren't me, by the way. We've got a online community that essentially runs autonomously. And we have a series of audios. They act, if you're familiar with guided meditations, they're similar to guided meditations, but they're completely different. because they're actually conversations. The audios lead you into a conversation with God where you journal answers about your life, business, money. You get literally instant breakthrough. Like think about getting 3 years of counseling in 30 minutes. That's what the audios end up doing. But those will run autonomously whether I'm there or not. And we very purposely built this really wonderful business, created it to grow, set the foundation systematically for it to be able to grow autonomously. And that came from that conversation with Nicole. So the thing that I'm uh, encouraging you with is not only try to start a movement with your book around something like that, but get the kind of help that you need, because those tiny little adjustments, like I was a fighter pilot, and I'll tell you, if you're 1 degree off, well, you're only 1 degree off. But if you're 1 degree off after 60 miles, you're literally a mile off. After 600 miles, you're literally 10 miles off the target, and you're not going to hit the target from 10 miles away. And often our missions will go 600 miles. So getting it down to the degree is actually really important. And those comments are super, super helpful. So I'm going to say hello to Diana Lovejoy. What's going on? You got to follow her organic gardening club on Instagram. She's one of the only people that I follow on Instagram. She's an amazing person right there. So it's good to see you too. All right, back to you, Nicole. I talked for just a little while, so I just wanted to
Oh
say
my,
hello to my friend Diana.
see why he's so fun? Oh man, thank you. Would you share a little bit about where you're headed with your books? Are you ready to share? You mentioned your next book coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got a goal now of 10 million copies, right? Do you want to talk about where you're
Well,
headed?
50. So, but yeah,
50.
we're heading. Yeah. So my original goal, uh, I was just praying one day and I was just dreaming with God, which by the way, if you don't dream big dreams, like my rule on dreams is, you should have at least one dream that when you tell the people that you know, they laugh. Okay. If people do not laugh at your dream, it's not big enough. That's the rule. All right. So one of my dreams is to sell a book, create a book that sells 500 million copies. To put that into context, the top selling nonfiction book of all time, Purpose Driven Life, sold about 42 million copies. So that's 10 times that. The number one fiction book, by the way, I wonder if anyone knows the answer to this. If you know the number, without Googling it, if you know the number one fiction book of all time, type that into chat. I would love to know if you know the answer to that. Number one fiction book sold about 400 million copies. So I thought, man, we can do that. This is beside the Bible, by the way. They always take the Bible out of the
Wait,
bestseller list
fiction
because
or
it's
non?
always
Wait, fiction or nonfiction?
fiction. The best-selling nonfiction was Purpose Driven Life, as far as we know, besides the Bible.
Yeah.
Best-selling fiction book was about 400 million copies sold, roughly. No es en inglés, es un libro en español, if you can speak that wonderful language. So don't Google it. I see some people looking at your computers. Don't. You got to just guess. Take a guess. All right. So one of the Don Quixote is right. Kimberly's got the answer right. Don Quixote. So Don Quixote de la Mancha. Um, y su amigo gordo. So if you're, yeah, so one of the goals is to sell 500 million copies. One of the goals is to build a movement. One of the goals, by the way, fully transparently, is to build a movement that's so big that we could actually just take, like, the goal is to get the whole country and then the entire world into an actual literal conversation with God. And by the way, some of you who are spiritually connected know what this is about, and some of you who aren't, that's fine. Some people are like, wait, what? Real conversation with God? Yes, like literally, you ask questions and you get answers. Okay, like an actual, like, real conversation with God. And I didn't even believe, by the way, 15 years ago, I didn't believe any of this existed. So I've come. If I can come this far, you can too. Okay. But so one of the goals is literally to create a movement that's so big that spans the entire world that we can actually, like, literally pick this up and move it right into the political space. Okay. If you want to know, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I left the tribal system quite some almost 10 years ago. I was basically done with having to agree with the people in my tribe about anything. And the second thing is I have some really, really good friends, like some very close friends who are very conservative, and I have some really close friends who are unbelievably liberal. Like I'm talking about dudes I built businesses with who are like very, very, very liberal. And while I disagree with like my my friends on either side of the extremes on certain issues. I really like them. I like having beer with them and like talking about the issues and everything. And I realized like one of the issues we have in our country is, like let's put it this way. You're not going to convince someone to join your tribe when you're shooting at them from your clubhouse into their clubhouse. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're shooting arrows from your clubhouse into their clubhouse, and at the same time you're like, "Hey, you should join our tribe. We're so much better." It doesn't like work that way. Have you ever have you ever used social media to convince someone of your political position that didn't believe it in the first place? It's like all you're going to do is argue, okay? It's another reason why I don't use social media. By the way, I think the issues are important, just so you know. But what's far more important are things like love, joy, peace, power, purpose. And if you bring that, a lot of the issues begin to go away. Okay, so one of the goals is to create literally a movement. Our vision is to take God Talks, the events, into stadiums. Can you imagine 70,000 people sitting there asking God questions about themselves, their family, money, their relationships? It would change everything. And then eventually we want to do an event on the mall in DC. 1.3 million people on the mall in DC. And like I said, at that point, we'll just move it over and move it right into the political world. And that'll happen across the world too. The whole world governments are all right for disruption. I think who was we talking to? Who was in education? She was by the road. Bree, is she still here? Maybe not. Maybe she had to go look at her thing. She's
Breathe.
like a teacher at
I
Berkeley.
am here. I'm just off camera, but I'm listening.
Oh, there you are. Okay, you're down there. Yeah. So like the government space right now, because it's so corrupt, is very ripe for transformation. The education space, because it's based in such old principles, and it doesn't move like the actual. It's very ripe for massive transformation, and I'm interested in transforming the spaces that are ready for that. Anyway, the point though on the entire business, and we've been building this very, very purposely for this, is that the business should not spend all of its time revolving around Ed. Okay. So like previous businesses essentially required me to be there. Otherwise it wouldn't work. We're building this business literally so that we can be able to pull me out if we need to and have the business or the message operate on its own. Now, one thing we are doing, and this is more to your question, Nicole, is we're creating additional assets that are specific using this God Talk. The fundamental principle of God Talks, just so you know, I know I'm kind of got ahead of myself, but fundamental principle of the book that's over my shoulder is this. You ask God questions, you get answers, and then this is really where this book diverges from most books on this topic. You use the answers to the questions to neurologically, physically, literally rewire, recode your mind. So in the book, I'll talk through the science of how the mind works, and then you can see how you can actually use words. And I even show you, like if you come to the event, I will show you neurological networks decoding and recoding with each other. I will literally show you how, 20 years ago, they used to think that the brain was essentially static in terms of its neural networks. You can actually see things like pulling away and recoding. And that's what happens when you have a new belief system. So sometimes, if you believe you're unworthy and then all of a sudden you believe that you're worthy, your mind will literally rewire itself. And as your mind rewires itself, opportunities will start to show up that you'll take advantage of because you've rewired your software to be able to receive those. And the whole point of God Talks is to show people how to have that conversation with God. Let that conversation be the vehicle for rewiring their mind, and then go off and do it. Now, the longer term, and again, kind of back to your question, is building a series of books, like niche specific series of books, using this process, the God Talks process, excuse me, in a specific niche. So, for example, the event that we did, which so many of you came to back in February, it was called God Talks Wisdom for Business. That event was very specific for business owners. Now, it just happens that the majority of the people that follow me are business owners. And it just so happens that like most people in the world now consider themselves entrepreneurs thanks to the gig economy and changes in the world and stuff like that. So the entrepreneurial space is growing really fast. More to the point, by the way. So I'm like looking around at the names and the pictures, and there's probably like maybe 80% female, 20% male if I'm looking at all the different pictures. The biggest movement right now in the entrepreneurial space is women. Okay, so like the fastest growing part of the entrepreneurial space is women. So because of that, my events reflect that. Our events are like 55-60% women. By the way, the other biggest growing part of the entrepreneurial space is 65 plus. The movement of folks back into the entrepreneurial space who would be Diana is like, yeah, that space right there too is really, really growing. And so our next book is a very specific God Talks book for business. I think it's called God Talks for Business. We haven't named the actual final title yet. And then the one that we're going to create right after that is actually God Talks for Kids. I'll write the business one because it's fundamentally my topic, but I will have a co-author for God Talks for Kids because that's not my I mean, I have kids and I know how like to make kids, but I don't know. I'm not planning on writing a book for kids. Okay. So, all right, Nicole, back to
All
you.
right. I think what I'd love to do, I'm going to bring, is to bring
Questions?
up anybody. Hold on. Who's got questions for Ed or wants to come? So if you do, why don't you, down in the Zoom box down below under reactions, if you click there, there's a way to raise your hand. And that way I can find you and we can bring you up and join us. So if you've got a question you want to fire at Ed, please do raise your hand so I can find you because there's several layers. And you can unmute yourself and start talking.
Highest selling fiction book, Kim, was Don Quixote.
Yeah.
Brian
Oh,
Zahn said, this completely turned my perception upside down on what it means to be an author. I have to tell you, man, when I heard the thing with J. Conrad Levinson, when he said that, it changed it. Like I can say most literally, it changed everything for me. When I teach, I wasn't trying to be trite when I said I consider the revenue from the book insignificant. I mean, I look at it like, every once in a while I look at it like, for example, so far today, here, I'll actually show it to you if you want to see it. So far today, I have 70 here. Let me see if I can pull this up. This is my book sales today. The modest, moderate book day. So there's 9 book sales and $57, right? So by the end of today, this may be 20 and that might be 100 or something like that. And if you do that 30 times a month, there's 3,000. Then you add Kindle, then you add Audible, then you add other book sources. And that's what I said. There's sort of like the 3,000 to 5,000 or whatever, which is nothing to shake your head at. But at the same time, it's not a business, It's like it's a side job until you add on income streams onto the book. And those take time and you have to build a movement. And and by the way, the best marketing means, just so you know, for your book, the best marketing means for your book is essentially doing what I'm doing right now. So I put a big banner over the word speaking, right? A lot of times you think speaking, like you think standing up on stage, and I do that like a lot actually. Like in 2 weeks, I'm heading to Nashville. Or in Gatlinburg. I'll be speaking at this event for 3 days. I'll be up on stage. We'll sell a couple hundred books, but more importantly, we'll probably end up with 20 event attendees and 2 coaching members out of that event. And every other speaker is probably getting a few $1,000s to go speak there, and I'm going to end up with probably $50,000 worth of business down the road simply because of going specifically to that event. And that's, like I said, the way to build a business. In my opinion, the single best way to grow your business, book, or brand is to do what I'm doing right now, which I consider speaking. So Zoom trainings, podcast interviews are massive right now in the book space. Hopefully you just heard what I said. Massive, okay? You getting in front of a person who has a following and is willing to interview you on your book or topic is massive. Massive, okay? I could talk more about podcasts if you want. Speaking, being interviewed for like media. I do every other Monday, I do this news spot for this news organization called Victory News. Every Monday, I'll sell 20, 30 books every time I get on that thing, right? It's just an opportunity for people to hear you, know you, and then you can use it on your social media, okay? So oh, Diana, I love your book title, by the way. Come alive in the garden, how to grow an organic food garden and generate health, joy, and community. Awesome. All right, what questions do you have? Oh, Allison, Tammy. I see a whole bunch of folks that just raise their hand. Go ahead, jump in.
Yeah. So, I just became one of your certified coaches
Yeah.
since your last event, and I haven't done anything because I'm writing my book right now.
You haven't finished your test yet, right?
No, I have done the test. But I haven't done anything with it.
Oh,
yet.
yeah.
Like writing the book. And I think I know the answer to this, but I just wanted you to talk about it again because I think maybe you talked about it at the event. But when you're looking at your funnel there with the different sections, um, and someone has just written a book, what would you say? And maybe it depends on the book, but if a person could do all of those, if it really fit into their book and everything, what would you do first? What
Yeah,
would you
good.
focus on first?
That's good. That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that question. So, congratulations on your certification too. That's awesome. So I love the way you asked the question too, because like the things that I listed on here, if you put doing an event, creating 4 products, creating a certification program, creating a coaching program, building your social media platform, getting a bunch of Zoom, speaking, like if you did that, you would uh you would drive yourself crazy with a to-do list that just would never get to done, you know? And by the way, major this is actually a major issue that a lot of entrepreneurs face, which is you go to an event, you hear somebody like me, and you're like, oh my gosh, now I have like 80 items on my to-do list. So the question you ask is absolutely the right question. It's interesting when I work one-on-one with the clients that I work with, my objective when I work with my coaching folks, I have a philosophy called easy and light, which you heard me teach in Phoenix, which basically means if your business feels like stress or work, you're doing it wrong. Okay. It should feel like joy. It should feel light. And what happens is business owners add on, but they never take off. And a lot of what I do with my coaching members is look at the 100 things they're doing and pick the 1 or 2 things that are actually working and clear the other 98 off their plate. So the way you ask that question is completely right on. It all depends on the book, it all depends on the message, and it all depends on the person. So leave your microphone on, and tell me what your book is about.
It's called 60 is a Good Start. And
Great, great.
target market is women in the second part of their life. Maybe
Oh,
they've raised their kids and all of that. And it's
yeah.
about natural health and dreams. I'm a traditional naturopath. And so it's
Oh, yeah, that's right.
purpose.
That's
Like
right.
the subtitle is A Powerful Body, a Purposeful Life, and a Plan to Make It Happen.
I
So
love
and
it.
it is
Okay.
it is a to do because there's a 60-day dare associated with it.
Yeah, great.
60 that could
Oh,
start refers to 60 years old or around there, and
yeah.
also 60 days developing good new habits.
How, just out of curiosity, how hard are the 60 days for the person?
How hard? Well, it's they're going to design it themselves with out of the big 5 in each of 3 categories: body work, brain work, and world work.
Okay. The reason I ask
So
is
it depends. They can make it easy. If they've never exercised, maybe it's walking to the end of the block every day for 60
yeah,
days. Or
good.
if
That's good.
they're like a big fitness person, maybe it's, they don't drink enough water, or maybe they need to add a supplement every day for 60 days. Whatever it is, that would be body work.
Yeah, so I'll take you backwards into in the little project that I'm doing, and then I'm going to go back forward, and then I'm going to answer your question. So you probably know this, but like I've been experimenting with using God Talks for body transformation purposes, and I've been experimenting on me on me. Uh, so I created an audio. I created a God Talks audio, and my goal was to listen to it every day for 90 days. It was 20 minutes long. To my credit, I did it basically like 40, 42 days. It did work, by the way. It completely transformed my thinking about my body. Most people's approach to health and fitness, just so you know, is like duty, or they just whip themselves into shape. They treat their body very poorly, like, come on, you can do this. When the body really responds to gratitude and love, and it actually wants to eat well, and it actually wants to move, but not because you're angrily forcing it to do it. It's because uh, you have such love and compassion and honor for your body. And I literally rewrote and shifted my frequency in my software during that 42 days, and the results came pretty close right after that. I look for sure better. Like I'm not being prideful or anything. Like people who saw me even at that event. Anyway, the long and short of it is, I'm recreating those audios because it was too long. So 20 minutes a day for 90 minutes was too much for anyone to commit to.
Not
And so
90 days.
actually, what's that?
20 minutes for 90 days.
Yeah. So what I'm creating now is a series of 8 audios. They're 10, like right at 10 minutes, and there's one per week for 8 weeks. So you actually audio switch. And my point is, uh, I use myself as my test subject for basically everything. And I was like, it's too long for me. If it's too long for me, it's too long for everyone at that point. And so what I'm recommending you do with regard to the process that people sign up after you is as easy as you can make it for the person to achieve success, especially initially. Like the first God Talks audio asking God about me is a really simple audio, and everyone has some fairly massive breakthrough the first one, right? The idea is like make it easy for them to do your process or your product. So as easy as you can make it. And Nicole will tell you this. When I wrote God Talks, so if you're familiar, obviously, because you're a coach, God Talks, the fundamental premise of God Talks is there's two questions. What lies do I believe about blank? What is true about blank? It's based on two questions.
Right.
When I first wrote God Talks, there were three questions. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this even simpler. I'm taking out the second question. Now we do the second question at the events. We go deeper in those. But even that, in terms of the process, simplicity really, really sells, especially on the front end of things. And then on the back end, the thing I would consider doing, and the cool thing is, Allison, you've like literally already been trained to do this. Remember all the training inside of God Talk certification about getting customers and deals at $5,000? I think that's actually a perfect model for you on the back end of your book. The reason I love like short-term coaching, short-term consulting, short-term advising, whatever you want to call it, it's probably coaching for what you're doing, is people can sign up, they can see a result, they can give you a testimonial, you can get paid, and it takes no infrastructure. You don't need a website, you don't need a lot of paperwork, you don't need a team, you don't need a social media following. If somebody reads your book or sees you speak or whatever, and they're like, I really think you can help me, and you're like, well, let's jump on the phone this week and maybe we can put together a program where we can do some coaching over the next 4 or 5 months. And I would literally charge them $997 a month or $5K, $997 a month for 6 months or $5,000 single pay, and coach that person in your process. And the benefit is twofold. Number one, it's the fastest way to get paid. Coaching, consulting, advising, easily the fastest way to get paid. Requires no infrastructure. And number two, you learn more about your process when you coach people on it than anything ever. Like for real, Nicole will tell you, I was teaching God Talks for 3-4 years before I wrote the book. I wrote the book. All right, to put this in the context, I wrote this book, 21 Day Miracle. I went from idea to bestseller on this book in 20 days. I am not exaggerating. I literally didn't even have an outline. I had an idea, and 20 days later, it was a bestseller. I was literally using my process to launch this book. And it's not a crappy book. It's really well written. It's funny. It's fast. It's the one that has 1,400 reviews. Like, it's a legitimate book. So when I wrote God Talks, I'm like, let's get this going, And I wrote the book. I literally wrote the whole book. I went to an island. I went to an island, Pacific Northwest. I went to this island in the middle of December. Eagles flying by. There was I could see the whole Puget Sound. There was this bay called Useless Bay, which I thought was hysterical. Okay. I wrote it for like 2 weeks. It was literally like, I remember somebody I think it was Michael Haig who told me, you're actually doing things all the writers talk about, but never do, the whole like go out to Walden and walk around the pond thing. So I wrote that book in 2 weeks, and I came home and I was ready to be like, let's launch this thing. And I had a conversation with God, and I said, what do I do next? And he said, we'll do an event. And I was like, well, what about the book? He's like, we'll do an event. And I did an event. I think, Nicole, you were there. It was Dallas. There were 50 people. I literally sent 3 emails to my list. 50 people showed up. I taught the process in the book. And during the event, I realized, oh man, there's like 2 or 3 holes that I need to plug, or 2 or 3 main questions. And there's a couple things that I needed to fix. So then I went back to the drawing board. I asked God, I said, what do I do next? And he's like, do an event. So I did another event. We had 150 people live, 200 people on Zoom. So 350 people came to this event, or maybe like 275. Huge event, gangbusters event. And then by the time I got done with that event, God's like, now finish the book. And I literally added about 20% to the book, because there were some very specific things. Like if you're familiar with the God Talks book, there's a frequently asked questions section at the end of chapter 6. That was really important, because I get those questions everyone asks me. Okay. So back to the point, coaching people on your process, you will start to find, not only will you start to find some holes, but more importantly, not so much the holes, you'll find like the sticking points. Like, people are using your process and they're like, but I've never really believed that. And you're like, did you even read chapter 2? So you start to realize there are these little moments where people get stuck. Okay. So with God Talks, the place people get stuck is, how do I know this is God talking to me? And I will tell you, I've had that question from atheists and skeptics, and I have had that question from people who have been walking with God conversationally for 40 years. Okay. I'm not kidding you. I know some of the most public, God said this people, and in private, they'll be like, sometimes it's hard for me to know. Like, it's a very common question. Everyone asks the question. And so I just go right after the question because I'm like, everybody's asking it. I might as well say them. Those the biggest question I get. And a lot of times authors will like push the big question away because they're afraid that it's going to reveal something in it. But I embrace that stuff, man, because when you go overt about that, people are like, thank you. I've been asking that question myself the whole time. And you coaching people will bring up not so much the holes, but although it'll bring up those little sticking points. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally, totally.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was a great
Thank you
answer.
so much.
If I do say so myself. I'm just joking. Some of you know I'm biased, but that doesn't mean I'm not right. All right. So Tammy.
Well, wait a minute. Before you bring up Tammy, we're bringing up her in a second. You mentioned Michael Haig, and we're just past the tip of the hour, and I know you can stay with us for 30 minutes. Michael Haig is our guest tomorrow on the challenge.
Yeah. Come on.
Met Michael Haig because of you. And then Michael Haig helped you with your book. Do you want to tell that story or any part of it?
Yeah, I'll tell it because I want make sure you tell him tomorrow. I won't be able to be there tomorrow because I've got a meeting in the morning, but make sure you tell Michael I told this story.
Okay.
And he's heard me tell it this way because I kind of make fun of him here in a second. But for those of you who don't know Michael Haig, first of all, he's literally the most brilliant person in the world when it comes to story. There's no one like him, period. His eye for story is unbelievable, and he will tell you he's a one-trick pony, which may be true. There's a couple other tricks he's got, frankly, but when it comes to story, he's brilliant. Okay, so I wrote this book called God Talks, and just so you know, basically every book is a collection of stories. Okay, so if you don't have stories, you don't have a book. The reason why people read books is because of the stories. And I can't emphasize enough how important stories are. If you hear me speak, anywhere, anytime, you will hear me tell story after story after story after story. You've heard me tell a handful already. And so your book is a collection of stories, period. I had a phone call a couple months ago with a very good friend of mine. His name's Denny. He's in his late 70s. Denny Fitzpatrick. Denny was the general manager of the Beverly Hilton Hotel for 30 years. Denny Fitzpatrick was at Merv Griffin's bedside holding Merv Griffin's hand as Merv Griffin passed into eternity. Okay. This guy has met every celebrity. He was in Hollywood for like the heyday of Hollywood. And he's like on the phone with me and he goes, I feel like God wants me to write a book, you know? And I was like, well, write a book. And he goes, well, I don't even know what I'm going to write. And I said, Denny, you've got like a million stories. Yeah, Denny was my speaker at God Talks last summer. I said, Denny, you got like a million stories. I said, all a book is a collection of stories with a point. Okay, that's a nonfiction book, and a fiction book is just a collection of stories. Like literally, that's how you can define a book, right? So Michael Haig is brilliant at stories, and that's his gift. And his other gift is he's very direct. Okay, Michael Haig does not do I love you sandwiches. You know what I love you sandwiches are? You're like, hey, I really liked your book, but we really need to fix this. And it was really awesome. Like most people do it like that. So Michael doesn't. He doesn't at all. He gets right to the point. Okay. So nonetheless, I wrote this entire book, God Talks, and Michael, like every month, he's like, hey, when are you going to send me your manuscript so that I can read it? And I didn't want to, I didn't want to. And he's like, when are you going to send me your manuscript? And I'm like, it's not ready for you to read yet. When are you going to send me your manuscript? So finally, like literally like a year after he asked me the first time, I sent him my manuscript. And Michael he takes your thing as a PDF and he makes like all these notes on it. It's all yellow. It reminds you of when you're in third grade and your teacher put red lines through everything. And so I get on the phone like a week later. I get on Zoom because that's Michael Haig's preferred medium of communication. I get on Zoom and he goes, all right, it needs work. I say, hey, man, I go, look, here's the thing. You and I have known each other for a long time. Say something nice. I literally go, say say something nice. He goes, oh, I really like that. I said, fine, now tell me what's wrong. Okay, literally, like I go, stop, say something nice. Oh, I really liked it. Okay, so Michael Haig said, here's the problem. He said, I'm an atheist, and because of that, I'm a skeptic, and you haven't convinced me yet. And the only way you're going to convince me that your process works is to tell a story. Now, to go backwards in time, the manuscript that Michael Haig read, the first chapter of the book did not have a story. The first chapter of the book was very short, and it basically told people about the process of God talks and why it was important. And he said, you said in this chapter that you're going to have a breakthrough, but see, I read that and I think, well, I'm not going to have a breakthrough because I don't believe you. Okay. And he goes, you see this story? And he literally points to chapter 8. He goes, this story belongs right here. And he moved his cursor 4 paragraphs into the first chapter. And he said, this story here belongs right here. And I said, look, that story, first of all, everything's where it needs to be. And like I started arguing with him, which is ridiculous. And I've had over 600 one-on-one clients, and I know what it's like when the clients argue. And you're like, whatever, man, like it's just an idea, you know? And for 30 seconds, I found myself arguing with the world's greatest story coach, right? And after 30 seconds of observing my ridiculous response to him, I just said to myself, just say yes and just go with it long enough to like continue the conversation. I said, okay, I'll move the story because I want it right here. And the story goes like this. The story was like this. The story went, so there I was in a counseling office, and the counselor looked at me and asked me to ask a question. And he said, I don't want to know if you're in a counseling office. I want to know you're in a counseling office on a folding chair with a cup of day-old styrofoam cup of day-old coffee in your hands. And it was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. It's kind of the way he said it. And so I'll read I literally, like, if you haven't gotten this book, just go get it on Amazon. It's like $20, okay? It's less than that. I think Amazon's running a sale. And read the first chapter. It's worth reading the first chapter of that book and this book, okay? Shameless self-promotion, but the book will change your life anyway, okay? So here's where's the hold on a second. I'm gonna give you the line where the story starts. Finally, I dragged myself to a counselor's office as a last resort. So there I was, sitting with my legs crossed on a folding chair with a styrofoam cup of day-old coffee in my hand, wondering exactly how I ended up in this counseling session in the first place. There were 3 of us in that room, the size of a closet, the counselor, his assistant, and me, all staring at each other, waiting to see who would make the first move. Okay, so that's the setting for the story. And if you're listening to that, you hear sitting on a folding chair with a day-old cup of styrofoam coffee in your hand in the room the size of a closet. And now instead of watching me, you're sitting next to me. You know what I mean? And that was Michael Haig's, he changed a lot, by the way. He changed a lot of my stories. But the biggest contribution was taking a story that I really liked where it was and moving it into a prominent place. And when you read the book, which you will, because you're going to get it today, you have to. It's only, dude, it's best deal going. When you read the book, you'll see why that was so important there. And I will tell you, it's the single thing almost everyone says about the book. And it almost always comes out like this. And I'll put it to you in the context of a story. I just got invited to be on a show. The show's called It's Supernatural. They have 2 million YouTube followers, and they're on TV. So the YouTube show isn't even the show. The TV show is the show, but they have over 2 million people that follow them on YouTube. And to put that into context, I was on a show recently with a guy who's got 70,000 followers, and I sold about, I got about 1,400 new leads to my website and sold about 500 books. Okay, so that's maybe 20 times that. It literally will be thousands and thousands of book sales in a day or 2 period of time. That's how big that show is. So the producer called me kind of out of the blue. It was one of those like, who's calling me from Charlotte kind of things, but I answered it. And he said, hey, my name's Lee. I'm a producer at It's Supernatural. And he goes, I wanted to reach out to see if you're interested in being a guest. He said, just so you know, I read your book. He goes, I bought your book this weekend when I heard about you. and I read your book. And he goes, dude, I was a page and a half into your book and I was weeping. He goes, I was weeping because the story that you told is so connected to my story that I was just sitting there crying. And and I will tell you, I hear that all the time. I hear, man, I was a page and a half into your book and I was weeping. And the reason, like the story is a good story, it's a really good story. But part of the reason it's a good story is because it's in the right spot. And the reason it's in the right spot is because homeboy from well, I guess he's not in LA, but he's in LA, right? He's just not in Hollywood anymore. Homeboy from Hollywood was like, you got to move your story, and I was smart enough to know, I was dumb enough that I should pay attention to him, you know. So another reason why you need to work with Nicole, by the way, because they still get to coach with Michael as a part of your process, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude
All right.
charges like $20,000 for coaching, and you get it as a. So, all right. Let's see. We probably have time for like one question more or something like that, or
Yeah,
whatever
we
you
got
want to do.
gotta go. So, all right, I'm bringing you up, Tammy.
What's up,
Go for
Tammy
it.
T?
And you're muted. There you go.
Hey guys, so I was just going to say a couple things. First of all, I want to be a first case example for how your funnel works, Ed, because I met Nicole through another mutual friend, and then I when it was time for me, I got the download. It's time to start writing my book. So I reached out to Nicole and received all her material, which had information about you and Michael in her kind of packet. Exactly. There's Ed right on the cover. So I looked at that, and as soon as I read that, it's funny because you even talk about in that, it talks about your story with Michael and how you told the story. And the thing that I found most interesting was as soon as I saw the God Talks book, of course, I knew I needed the book. So I bought the book immediately, gobbled it up, and told Nicole on our first session, I said, oh my gosh, I need to know Ed. So then you had your event in Scottsdale, which is where I am. And so full circle, I come to the event, and then now you and I will start coaching in the summer.
Yeah.
And of course, and I are going to start writing my book. So the second thing I was going to say is the reason I love both of you is that you talk about creating a movement. There's so much more to being an author or even promoting your business, but really truly creating a movement that you're passionate about, which is what I'm all about, which is purpose. So when you're doing work like that and you're creating something that's going to move mountains and create purpose for people and a true movement for the world and having those goals that people may laugh at one day, nothing should ever stop you from what you're doing. So both of you as a team, I'm super excited that you're both on my team because I know that we're going to do some really incredible things because you have those same types of goals to move those mountains. So I'm grateful.
Cool, man. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
awesome having you at the event in February too. Right in your hometown.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Tammy.
I think we have one more question.
Neil, you're muted. I think you can do that, right? There. Let's get it. Neil's been with us since the beginning.
What's up, Neil?
Hi, great program. I really like your work. It ties into what I would like to do down the road. I'm a former high school counselor. I had all kinds of visual presentations. I used to get up and talk to kids, and they're looking all over the place, and they're not paying attention. So I started to incorporate lots of visuals.
Yeah.
And if you do something visual, they're all looking. And so I've got a large group of them. I have another publisher. This was done prior to even knowing Nicole existed. And so publishers considering that now. I developed it into a book for parents, which they're also considering at this time. I want to go a lot further. There are different levels. There's a school level. I thought about a business level because of using the visuals in sales presentations, et cetera. But skipping down to tie into the religious theme that you've been talking about. Many people go to church. Many more people don't go to church. Most sermons or homilies are incredibly boring. You sit there and you listen, and I have a hard, if a preacher can hold my attention for 7 or 8 minutes, they're really good.
Yeah.
And so I want to try to incorporate the visuals into those. And so maybe I want to approach, I guess, archdioceses and large minister associations, et cetera, and teach them the same techniques. Is approaching groups, is that after that, I guess I could do individual clients after that, but I think the large groups and throughout the world, just archdioceses alone, there's thousands. And within them, there are many, many customers. Do you consider approaching groups of business?
Just depends on what you're offering, right? So like for example, one of my companies is a software tech company. We've got a home improvement app and a 360 spherical camera. It's the only camera that exists it's the only technology like this on planet Earth. So right now, the people who are buying the 360 camera application are real estate agents who want to better show their homes online, because a lot of people buy houses, search online for houses now. And so our sales team is going for like big groups that have 100 to 10,000 real estate agents as a part of the group, and licensing it to the big group so that their agents can use it. It's more of an enterprise sale, so you get paid $10,000 or $20,000 a month instead of $200 a month from each of the agents or something like that. So it depends on the business and it depends on the application. I don't know much about the Catholic Church and how I used to go to Catholic school, but that was quite some time ago, Neil, like really some time ago. But I literally went to Catholic school back when when corporal punishment was like a thing. Okay. First through eighth grade, Waldron Academy for boys, baby. And Nicole will tell you, there's a little story in the book about Sister Mary Elephant.
I wasn't going to say it. I was going to type it.
There's
Mary
a story. I failed kindergarten thanks to this nun who hated me. Well, thanks to me being awful. And this is another story, another story. But more than that, there's two questions to ask. Especially if you're gonna sell Blues Brothers. Yeah, yeah. So if you're gonna sell anything, by the way, anything, but especially if you're gonna sell something to a group, okay? The first question is what is the problem that you solve? And embedded in that question do they know this is a problem, right? So the problem you solve is making homilies or sermons more interesting so that the parishioners will be able to consume, pay attention, and implement whatever it is that the person's teaching. The second thing is, do they recognize this as a problem, right? Now, if they recognize it as a problem and it's a problem, you have the recipe for making a sale. And then the second question, so the first question is really two questions. One, is there what's the problem? And subset to that is, do they recognize that there's a problem? And by the way, if the answer to the second one is no, move on, because then you got to talk them into like why there's a problem in the first place. It's unbelievable. So the second question is, who is the decision maker, right? Because fundamentally, it's completely worthless to talk to anyone who can't like make a decision and pay you on the spot. And I don't know, at the archdiocese, like you've got the bishop or the cardinal, but they're probably not the ones making the decision on the resources or the multimedia. You got to figure out who's got the budget to support certain things. So first question is, what's the problem you solve? And the second one is who the decision maker is, And then if your solution helps people's presentations get better, then it's like, look at the other places where people may pay you for stuff like that. There's National Speakers Association groups in each city. Maybe that would be a good place to start practicing your teaching a little bit, because all those speakers, are there because they want to be more interesting. There's Toastmasters groups in every city. Same thing. There's speakers there who are trying to be more interesting, Now, Toastmasters has its own process, which, they may or may not want you to interfere with, but there's just a couple of ideas as you get started.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
I do know that they know that that's a problem. It's a universal problem in churches.
Yeah, then you got to find.
They've got to figure out, and the mass isn't going to change, but the homily can change, and that's
Right.
Incorporating kids and get people physically up on the altar besides the priest and interacting. It's easy to do. It's easy for me to do, and if they just start, it'll roll.
Yeah. Good. Michelle said, potential hook is, why are they sleeping in your pews or in the pews? So, cool.
And thank
My
you for
favorite movie scene of the Catholic Church is in While You Were Sleeping, when Ox and Jack are having an argument in the middle of church. Do you remember? And they're saying and also with you, why would he want to do that? Bless your, So that's one of my favorite movie scenes.
And going
So-
back to your elementary school experience, I was there. I did the
Yeah.
same thing. I wrote rules when I was in the 5th grade. We used to have to write rules. I will never ever do this again for the
Yeah.
sister. And so when we had nothing else to do, we used to write them and stockpile them. And then if a kid got in trouble and said, "Sister, when I want these," we would just hand him the sheets. We would trade and just
Yeah.
they would go up there and hand them in. It kind of made her mad.
Yeah, they, you know, I said, I sort of threw one of the nuns under the bus. I will say, there's a book down here. Oh, one of my coaching students, or one of my event attendees, John Morrissey, wrote a book called "Thanks to My Teachers," and he asked, "Could I interview you?" And about one of your favorite teachers. And my favorite teacher by far is this nun whose name was Sister Maureen. I failed kindergarten. I was a defunct first grader, and I showed up at second grade, and this woman, like, I don't.
Shuts when the story's getting good. He freezes.
Yeah.
Come back, Ed. We're going to lose him in 7 minutes anyway.
That's
So I'm going to
lasting
wrap him.
And it was based on this woman's belief in me. So I know I throw Sister Mary Elephant under the bus, but this woman, Sister Maureen, Sister Mary Elephant was not named Sister Mary Elephant. She had some other name that I don't remember. But Sister Maureen was actually Sister Maureen, and this one woman took a real interest in me, and it completely changed my life. So it's fun to talk about the good ones if you're going to make fun of the bad ones. So. Well, I guess, Nicole, I got to run here in a few minutes and get off to this coaching session, but let me give a couple of quick thoughts just kind of as a wrap up. First of all, congratulations for being here. There's a lot of people spending a lot of time online right now with completely worthless endeavors. And I think creating and writing a book is the best thing you can do as an entrepreneur. By the way, even if you write a book and no one ever reads it, it's still the best thing. Just you getting your ideas onto paper. Like I told you, my first book, this first book, like, Fighter Pilot Performance for Entrepreneurs, man. It's like my Battlestar Galactica book. Bought 3,000 copies. Some of them are still sitting in my office. But you know, my first book got me to my second book. My second book got me to my third book. Simply the process, that creative process is worth it. That said, if you want to build a business and you want to do it right, get help. Like, don't be cheap on your way to success. I told you I paid Nicole to do the work. That's not because I have like just millions of dollars sitting over here that I can just like throw out. I like was diligent at who I was looking at. But if you want something that, look, I'll just put it to you this way. You can pick up anyone's book, and the moment you open it, or sometimes just when you look on the cover, you know if the person invested in quality. Most books, especially most self-published books, look like they came back out of Fred Sanford's backyard from Sanford and Son. And you want something when people look. I did an interview with the guy that I told you about, 70,000 people on his YouTube, and I handed him my book during the interview, and he goes, "Man, that looks great. Wow." And he was like, "How did you?" And I go, "That's the response that you want." Okay. So get help. Stay connected to this community. This is helping you. Okay. So definitely stay connected. Come to one of the God Talks events if you can. They're worth it. Buy the book for sure. Join the community. All those things. Look, even if you don't do those things, like, for real, get this book so that you can see how in the book we encourage people. Hold on, check it out. Page 0, okay? Read what's there. Click on the QR code. Go to the website. Follow the emails. Like there's a marketing strategy in place that you could observe if you want to. And the price of entrance is like $17 or something. Like, get involved. To look, all of the great marketing campaigns were built on someone else's ideas for stuff. I have entire marketing campaigns that I have observed from Russell Brunson and taken and changed on my own. And just so you know, Russell did the same when he built his. Okay, so it's very common in the marketing world to get ideas from other people and implement that. And I'm just saying, if you want to build something like something that I'm building, well, then follow it. You know what I'm saying? Like, take the time to see what's happening behind the scenes and the membership site and all those things. Get ready for tomorrow. Michael Haig's going to be awesome. Very different. He and I teach very differently, but you will walk away. There's a brilliant wisdom to the man as well. So that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. We're going to talk about the hero's inner journey tomorrow. And I am going to share a little bit about our process and what it looks to work with us, or what it looks like. So thank you. Thank you, Ed. Hoorah.
Hoorah. Thanks, Nicole. Have an awesome
Thank
day,
you.
everyone. Thank you for your
Take care.
time.
Bye,
All right. God
everybody.
bless. Bye.